Hi, this is Kevin Deal. Today we're going to talk about the Pathos In The Groove Phonostage. It's Italian Day here, so I am wearing my Alfa Romeo shirt. You know, and I was thinking about that. I bought this Giulia Quadrifoglio and I've had it for more than 2 years. And it inspires me more now than it did a year ago or when I first bought it. You know, and that doesn't happen that much when you buy a car. Usually it's kind of like boring, boring, boring. But it has gotten to be better and better. And I really truly understand what it means to buy something with that true Italian passion. And I was thinking, you know what, I'd like to do a review about it, a long-term ownership thing, and do something on our YouTube channel. But I don't know if that would annoy people or not, but I just feel so strongly about it, you know. And I mean, I have two Porsches, and I like them, but I've got an axe to grind about this whole dependability thing, because I want to call bullshit on it. I don't know, do you think I should or not? Why am I doing the video on this? I'll tell you why. We got in another Phonostage from another manufacturer that is supposed to be a kind of a cool unit, and it's about $1,500. It's $1,500. And my staff was very underwhelmed by it. And I said, well, don't judge it yet. You got to let it break in. Give it we tell people 500 hours on everything, right? The better it's built, the longer the break-in typically. Give it 500 hours. That's what we always tell people. And so we're going to judge it again then, but I was looking at it and I go, you know, this is not very impressive. It was very cute, but it wasn't really impressive. And I said, man, for just a couple $100 more, I mean, you can get into this. And you know, I shudder to do a video about this because they are hard to get because they're a handmade product, but we're alleviating that. Look, I have loved Pathos. For decades, I have loved Pathos products. But they are an Italian manufacturer that makes things perfectly. I mean, it's dependable, it's beautiful. Everybody that works in this industry, they all say the same thing. I love the way it sounds. I love the design, and I love the build quality. The one thing they don't love is that it's kind of hard to get them because, you know, the previous distributors just, first off, they did not invest the money to make sure that you had backstock of it. And the other thing is they weren't technical enough to take things apart and show you what makes them different. And that's what I want to do because there is a lot to talk about in this. And, you know, the stock situation is being addressed because we're going to invest the money to make sure that we have it, and then we will have an ever-expanding dealer network, and I just want to share the joy because it is a company. They're the nicest people in the world. I mean, and they're so humble. They're not like me where they're like, you know, yakety yak people, and I'm here to yakety yak about it because there's a lot to talk about. I mean, look at this thing. That other unit was just a little box and a wall wart power supply, right? Look at this power supply. First off, everything here is made in Italy. When I went to the factory last year, I could not believe it. They have a metal shop. They have a paint shop. They buy Paduke trees and cut them into planks, and then the planks are cut into the wood trim pieces. You go to their website, and you're going to see a picture of a hand sanding a piece of wood. That is Gaetano's son, Luca's hand. You got what I'm saying? And then I was so shocked to see they even make their own remotes. Nobody makes their own remotes. I mean, I want my cameraman to put the video in real quick.
Eccolo qua, pezzo iniziale, te che piacciono i programmi. Ecco, mancava il pezzo finale.
Nobody does that. You go to China and you get remotes for $4, right? At most. You know, and just put them in. Just cheap plastic remotes. Not Pathos. But when I went to the factory, I fully expected the metalwork was done overseas. No. The PCBs are done overseas. No. Everything in their products are made in Italy. And if they're not made right there in the factory, they're made within arm's reach of the factory. And I mean capacitors. I mean, not in this case because they're not using the big Italian caps because it's not an amplifier. But they're using Nichicons, right? and WIMAs. And then look at this transformer. This is the power supply here. Instead of a wall wart that you end up having to replace with an S booster to get a good linear power supply, they give you a very nice power supply. This is an Italian power transformer, and then look right here, you're going to see a series of Solon capacitors and WIMA capacitors. And then there's your regulation devices right there. Underneath the power supply, there's a little switch to defeat the ground, because you always have ground problems with phono. I mean, that happens all the time, but they were smart enough to think about those things and what might happen to you. So there's a switch on the bottom of the power supply. It hooks up with an umbilical cord to go here. You know, the reason you gotta keep the power supply away from the phonostage is phono cartridges give out a minuscule amount of voltage. There is nothing that comes out. So you're amplifying nothing and bringing it up to line level, and you are equalizing it. And it's a difficult thing to do perfectly, and it takes good parts. So you keep the power supply out because you don't want it radiating anything in here where the amplification is happening. But where this power cord plugs in with the XLR into the main unit, there is more filter capacitance. And the reason they do that is to drop the noise further. There's a row of Nichicon capacitors, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 more capacitors. One for the positive leg, one for the negative leg, and then there's little what are called snubbing capacitors in the middle, little WIMAs. And those are to get rid of high frequency hash. That's a lot of parts. Compare that to other products at this price range. It is not happening. Now, after we go to the power supply, you're going to go up here, and there's another little board, and that's going to be the logic circuitry. Why do they have to have a logic circuit? Because they use relays inside. You've heard me talk about this with other products. Switches are not really great. I mean, most manufacturers that make phonostages are going to use dip switches. And you know what? They work just fine. You know, for setting capacitance and for setting impedance loading, they work just fine. But the best way to do it, if you could, is to use relays. But God, it's just not cost effective to do it. But Pathos did it. Over here, there's 2 rows of boards. The one in the very back is for the resistive loading. Look over here, you're going to see that this whole phonostage, the amplification stage, is dual mono, 2 separate signal paths. And you're going to see that these relays open and close to switch in more or less resistive loading. That's the adjustment that you make, because the loading is really super, super critical. And it gives you a lot of choices. It gives you 47,000 ohms, 1,000 ohms, 470 ohms for those guys that have, and gals that have Soundsmith cartridges, 220 ohms, 100 ohms, and 66 ohms. Anywhere you want to go, it's going to be great for you. It also has adjustable capacitive loading, and that is also done with relays, and I cannot think of another company that's doing that. So if you look at this other board in the front, you're going to see a whole bunch of WIMA capacitors and a whole bunch of relays. Now, why do you need to change capacitive loading with moving magnet cartridges and some other instances? You need to do that to reduce ringing, and you do it all by ear, and the controls are right on the front. So all you do is you turn the knob until it sounds good. Easy breezy. You don't have to be a technician to figure this thing out. Now, it has 4 different gain settings. 43 dB, that's for regular moving magnet cartridges. 50 dB, that's going to be for like high output moving coil cartridges or some of the moving iron cartridges like Soundsmith. 56 dB, if it's maybe a high output moving coil that's not quite as beefy in its output. And then 62 dB for low output moving coil cartridges. That's cool. But what's even cooler is this, how they change the gain. Again, they use hermetically sealed relays made in Japan. They switch resistors in and out depending on what gain setting you're using. You see these little brown parts right here? Those are tantalum capacitors, and they're critical for having great voltage stabilization. Now, what's really cool is how they get you the gain. listen to what I'm telling you. We talked about noise. Phonostages are adding up to 62 dB of gain to this minuscule little voltage that's coming out of the cartridge, right? It's nothing that's coming in. So what chips they use to add that gain are super, super critical. When I took it apart, I couldn't read the chips because of my old man eyes. I had to get my phone out and take a picture of this thing and then go on the screen, and I'm like, oh my God. They are using the AD797 chip, Analog Devices 797 chip. That is one of the best op amps that you can buy, period. Period. They cost 10 times what a regular op amp costs, a cheap op amp costs. 10 times. Go look it up. And for you people that are gearheads, that maybe you build your own stuff, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not making this up. The AD797 is used in high-end microphone preamps where they're also dealing with the same problems of reducing noise. But what's really cool is this. There are 3 of those chips per channel. And that means 6 AD797s. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of parts. And I have to applaud them for that. Look at the metalwork too. All of this is done in Italy. I mean, you can get it in silver or black. I mean, it's stunning, stunningly beautiful. You know, and as to how it sounds, it's just a showcase of what a good, solid-state phono preamp should be. What Hi-Fi gave it a 5-star rating, and in the for column, they give you 2 columns, for and against. For, they talked about the build quality, the sound quality, gorgeous this, blah, 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 blah. In the against column, it said one word, nothing. And they also said it was one of the best phonostages they had tested. That's what I'm talking about. So if you can get something that is a handcrafted product, that has the soul, I mean, look at this board. It's signed off by Fabio. And it's not that Fabio. It's the Fabio that works at the factory. And I met Fabio. And he's one of those guys. You know what I mean by those guys? He's tall, dark, and handsome. And I don't normally like people like that, but because I'm short, squatty, and bald. Now let's take a peek at the back panel. I want to show you. It has a set of RCA inputs. You got the gain settings. Then you have RCA outs. But you also have a set of balanced outs. And again, they did it the nice way. They didn't do it the most expensive way. The most expensive way to make the XLR outs transformer coupled. That is not happening, not at this price point, and I don't expect it because that would have raised the price by a lot of money. But they did use a pair of ICs again, and that's a great way to do it. So if you have a balanced preamp or an integrated amp that is a truly balanced design, you're going to be able to take advantage of that. So go to the website, read about it. We have dealers that we are opening. We are bringing more inventory in. I shouldn't even do this because I don't even have a jillion of them, but we're going to work that out because Pathos is something that has to be celebrated. It's a product that when you buy it, it's going to have an intrinsic value that's going to go way beyond what it normally should. Just like an Alfa Romeo, it is something that you will cherish for years and years and years. Thanks for listening.